everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are gonna be a reaction streamer today. So I don't really normally do this, but somebody did encourage me. I want to thank the person that commented that I actually do pretty well with reactionary stuff, because honestly doing this kind of stuff, it's just like, I don't know, it's very iffy. It's very iffy. I'm not gonna lie to myself, it's very iffy whenever I kind of do this kind of like, you know, just reaction content in general, because it's just like, I don't know if I guess it's just that feeling of, am I reacting correctly? Everything has to be done correctly. I don't know. Everybody reacts in their own way, but I want to thank that one comment that I saw during one of the Denser videos. I really want to thank you. But we do have this video introduced to me by one of my actually Patreon supporters, by the way. I got Patreon supporters up there. So Big Kuma DM was actually the person who wanted to show me this video. This is which video game introduced dual wielding by Ahoy. So we're gonna go on ahead and take a look at this. See what goes on. This is only a 13-minute video, and we're gonna extend it by like fucking 5 seconds.
Give a guy a gun, and he's Superman. Give him two, and he's God.
Bro, the amount of times
using two guns at once is impractical, unrealistic, and generally a lie. I'm
gonna be 100% with you. Okay, so there he is correct. Using two guns is fucking impractical as shit. But when you play a game where you're able to do that shit, dude, I was playing, the game that was great with it, fucking Hotline Miami. I think it was number 2, where you get the guy who's dual wielding like 2 Uzis, dude. That shit's fucking crazy. Cause you could split it. It goes from the middle, and then you could split the guns by the 2 sides, and it just looks cool. I'm not gonna lie, it's gotta be the coolest fucking thing to do.
Ability. And yet, we see pistols akimbo in many action-oriented games.
Pistols are gotta be like my favorite.
So how did such a reckless regard for accuracy originate? What was the first video game that introduced two-pistol gunplay? And how on earth do you reload when both your hands are full?
I know it's not gonna be a Doom mod. It's gonna be a
carrying multiple weapons was once an issue of practicality. With early flintlock pistols taking quite some time to reload, pirates such as Blackbeard would not be seen with a brace of fewer than 6 such sidearms ready to fire.
Bro, yo,
by the time of the Old West, revolvers were the norm, and some cowboys will have carried more than one, for those situations where a single 6-shooter simply won't do. Such backup weapons were used singly to avert a lengthy reload, however, firing a weapon from each hand with wild abandon, probably reserved for desperados with nothing to lose. The blame for dual wield's popularity today lies squarely at the feet of cinema. With the popularity of westerns aligned with the rise of the action film of the 1970s, it was...
You gotta understand, like, it had to do with the rise of cinema. Yes, correct. But somebody in real life had to have sat there and been like, one gun is cool, but what about 2? And they just picked up 2 revolvers and just started using them, dude. Like, okay, like, I know you're, I know a couple of you aren't from the United States, so you're definitely not like used to seeing. Because I've used a gun before. I have experience with guns before, and they're really fun to use. I'm not gonna lie. Like, if you go to a shooting range and you shoot targets with it, it feels fun. It's almost like if you're playing those the gun machine games, but in real life, obviously. But you also got to remember that you're wielding something that could have the potential to remove somebody's existence in a matter of a second. So obviously, or hurt somebody. So understandable. You gotta. But if you go out to a range, it is very fun to just shoot at targets, because it kind of has that same feeling that you do with, like, you know, when you're playing, like, I don't know, House of the Dead, or just like your little circus games where you're like shooting targets and whatnot. Those are fucking fun. But like 2 guns, right? Like, don't get me wrong. So playing House of the Dead, 2 players, right? You can play, it plays with 2 players, you play with the second person. But what you could do, I don't know if anybody's thought of this. I'm sure I thought of this. I'm sure everybody else has thought of this. But you can use 2 quarters and you use both of the gun. That bow and arrow is fun. If you know how to use it, bow and arrow is fun. Crossbow is fun too. But like, you get 2 quarters and you put it in the game. It works with time, whatever the fuck game. It's a time game. Time Splitters, no, Time Splitters is a different game. But basically, you get it and you wield 2 guns, dude. The game, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. I'm not even gonna lie.
It's only a matter of time.
But somebody has to have thought of that.
Action films are not noted for...
Somebody back in the fucking day had to have woken up and been like, dude, one revolver is cool, but let me fucking dual wield them. Let me get 2 of those bitches. Give me 2 black powder revolvers, and I'm going out with a bang. You can't. It's human nature to be this dumb. It's not. It's a fucking. It's normal.
For their
it's
subtlety
normal to be this
and
dumb.
firepower was one trait not often spared. Dirty Harry's .44 Magnum was described as the most powerful handgun in the world.
And then there was
and so what better way to up the ante than to double down on a second pistol? In the 1969 film Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, each employ a pair of Colt single-action army revolvers in a daring shootout while fleeing from the Bolivian police. Another more prominent use of dual wielding in a Western film is the outlawed Josie Wales from 1976.
Ooh.
Featuring Clint Eastwood as the titular character, a wanted man driven by vengeance, and a need for firepower that only pistols akimbo might provide.
And fucking hitman movies.
The 1970s also marks the earliest days of electronic entertainment. The popularity of Pong from 1972 spurred development of the arcade game industry, some of which offered crude digital representations of popular culture at the time. Video games with a Western flavour were inevitable.
Dude.
Gunfight in 1975 was the first. A simple shooting game with players 1 and 2 facing off in a 6-shooter duel.
That's fucking funny.
One of the earliest depictions of dual-wielded pistols in a video game is in an arcade title from 1979 called Sheriff.
A lot of Western movies are very much like think of it of what a samurai movie is, where it's kind of just like the main appeal is the fighting. It's the same thing with like Western movies. The main appeal is kind of like the gunfights and stuff like that. They're very well choreographed and stuff. It's very fun to look at and stuff. It's very, very much what you want to see. But like, if you want, what's a good Western movie? If you want a good Western movie, I would recommend Django Unchained. That one is such a good Western movie. I really like that one. It's the one about the guy who becomes a freed slave, and then he actually ends up becoming the person who frees the slaves, and he gets taught how to shoot by his fucking homie. Fucking good. Bro, Pong, dude. You
An early
underestimate
Nintendo
how fun a game
published
can
by
be
XD.
if you have a good friend.
Clearly
If you
taking
have somebody
cues from
that
the
you can
Western
fucking
movies of
mesh
its
well
era,
with,
this
any
multi-directional
dumb
shooter
little game
featured
becomes the
bandits clearly
funnest thing
seen
ever.
swinging 2 pistols.
So fucking ridiculous.
It was none other than Shigeru
But,
Miyamoto
for a
that was
little bit.
responsible
I
for
played
Sheriff's
Pong,
artwork.
though. It's a little,
So the mind
it's a
behind
little
Mario and Zelda
tedious.
might also be behind the very first video game to feature dual-wielded pistols. The Western's popularity saw decline by the end of the 70s, with Star Wars in 1977 prompting a shift towards space shooters, like the phenomenally popular Space Invaders in
Space Invaders
1978.
was my favorite game as a kid.
There remained a few Western-influenced games, however, and titles such as Gunsmoke on the NES applied a familiar frontier theme to the well-rehearsed scrolling shooter genre. One suitably named swan song of the Western's spike in popularity was the 4-player run-and-gun action of Sunset Riders in 1991.
That's fucking crazy.
With some parallels to the 1985 film Silverado, one of the characters on offer makes use of 2 revolvers simultaneously. This is perhaps to position the character as a Billy the Kid derivative, rash and impetuous through youth, but otherwise boasting legendary gun skill.
Bomberman was great.
The neon-tinged 80s saw the displacement of Westerns in favour of the blockbuster action film.
Wait, what did that mean?
And one man had influence outweighing any other.
Which is the first
John
game
Woo.
to do dual wielding,
His brand
right?
of
And then he
high-octane
shows one old
gunfight
game
was
that does
fueled
dual
by
wielding.
acrobatic
Two of them,
display,
actually. Two of
bottomless magazines,
You fucking
and
tried two of them.
flagrant
Is
use
that
of
not
guns
it?
akimbo. A Better Tomorrow in
don't
1985 was the
wanna know.
first outing
I'm
of dual
probably gonna
pistols in
click
a
the
John
link.
Woo film, but it certainly wasn't the last. Hard Boiled in 1992 was his breakthrough hit in the West, marking Woo's transition to Hollywood and proving particularly influential in other media. Chow Yun-fat features as Inspector Tequila Yen, an undercover cop who's not afraid to get his hands dirty, an anti-hero with a total disregard for authority. It was around this time that the foundations of the first-person shooter genre were laid. Id's Wolfenstein 3D was released the same year.
Wolfenstein is
With
fun.
Doom's release in 1993, the now familiar format of gun-focused gameplay with a first-person view had taken hold. And with the influence of cinema, it wouldn't be long before we would see a game featuring Woo-esque gunplay.
One of my pleasures. One of my
Typical.
tiny pleasures.
You wait ages for a first-person
When you-
shooter
when
featuring
you
dual
hit
wielding,
a
and then
fucking
2 come along at once.
smooth, It's great.
Bungie's Marathon and Apogee's Rise of the Triad were both released on the 21st of December 1994. Bungie are better known today for the Halo series and the forthcoming Destiny. But back in the day, they were champions of the Macintosh platform, providing an answer to the IBM-compatible's Doom.
Wolfenstein, my old school
Unlike
PC
the
too,
paper-thin storyline behind Doom, Marathon was replete with lore. Such attention to detail is something Bungie would build much of their reputation on. The gameplay was no slouch, however. The action was polished and as visceral as any competitor. Doom might have the edge in notability, but perhaps only by grace of platform choice. Rise of the Triad was released the same day as Marathon, and is perhaps more explicitly influenced by John Woo. Dual pistols feature much more prominently. Whilst you start the game with a single pistol, you need take only a few steps forward to be bestowed with a second. Clearly, this is not a game that takes itself too seriously. Between the ludicrous jibs, jump pads, and magical weapons, Rise of the Triad does much to establish an exaggerated nature. And within this scope, dual wielding feels relatively mild.
There were so many games like this. I
the
didn't
full
realize.
version wouldn't see release until
This kind of like style of game, because there's a game that I saw like not too long ago. Actually, there's a guy. They're called boomer shooters now, but the type of first person shooters that this came out on was so interesting because when they were talking about Doom during that time, there was this thing that they were talking about how it was actually a 2D shooter, but it acted like a it was a 2D shooter that acted like a 3D shooter. I don't really know the metrics of it. You can search this up, but the maps themselves are basically 2D, and they made it so you kind of move in a 3D way, which makes sense because whenever you shot monsters that were above, because they're Doom likes. All of them are Doom likes. Doom is the first person shooter that came out during the time, I think, mind you. This is fucking don't hold me on this one, because like I kind of like I'm a little like unseasoned when it comes to this kind of thing. But like Doom was like the first person shooter, so a lot of games came out that were just like Doom, but each one was kind of different. Each one came out different, but the graphics that they used for Doom kind of went on to the other ones. Like Duke Nukem, we had fucking we had Doom, Duke Nukem, we had fucking Rise of the Triad, we had Blood, we had Blood, literally just Blood. We had that one where you play as fucking, I forgot what his fucking name was. That's interesting. I'm hearing it clacking. But yeah, no, this type, like, it was like a boomer shooter. Because there's a new game that's coming out that I'm going to be playing later on in the future once I later on in the future. It's called a Reverend, which is kind of just like one that it's a really funny game that we were playing last time. Interesting, but it's like it's so it's so fucking interesting when you get into it, because it's just like, oh, but this is what it was. This is what first person shooter was. It was JPEGs on a screen with like things with two fucking thing animations, but it was still cool to look at. This was like the fucking graphic pinnacle of the time. It was interesting. This was innovative, and it was innovative because you didn't have the actual technology. Like, you didn't have the actual technology to make an actual first-person shooter. You were stuck with like 2D shit. Everything back then was 2D. You can look at Doom and you can be like, oh, but that's 3D. No, search it up. No joke. Doom was 3D. Doom was 2D. Doom was technically 2D. And another thing that you notice when you do it is when you shoot, because you can see creatures at higher elevations, your bullet automatically magnetizes towards it whenever you're looking above. Obviously, you have to look in the direction, but you also have to make sure that you're aligned enough to actually shoot the character. So also there was kind of like auto aim was made during that time too, so that's fucking funny.
Till February 1995. But by grace of its initial shareware release, both Rise of the Triad and Marathon share the trophy for being the first FPS game to feature dual-wielded firearms.
But I mean like 2D as in like,
Marathon had an inevitable sequel in Marathon 2 Durandal in 1995, a game which featured akimbo shotguns with flip-cocking action, in a terrifying portent of what the future of the Call of Duty series held.
And also,
the crypt-robbing Lara Croft's signature weapons in 1996's Tomb Raider are a pair of pistols perhaps picked for potency when facing off against prehistoric peril.
Games are such a fun
or perhaps just for the cool factor, otherwise to cover for a lack of Lara's ability to aim. The shamefully underrated FPS Blood by Monolith in 1997 featured guns akimbo as a power-up. and would double the firepower of almost any of the weapons on offer,
blood!
even the rocket launcher.
Fucking Caleb, dude.
By 1998, hardware-accelerated graphics were rapidly becoming the norm,
Rise of the Triad
and with a greater
Marathon.
ability to push polygons came a surge in the
Shared
sheer
trophy.
number of first-person shooter games released.
That's crazy.
Unreal Tournament was certainly one of the better ones. An
know
expansion on the
he's talking
original
about, like,
Unreal's
improvements of
multiplayer
it. That
aspect,
makes sense.
with an emphasis on fast-paced and competitive action. The starting weapon was a tad feeble compared to most of the Arsenal's offerings, but should you pick up 2 Enforcers, your available firepower was doubled. By the turn of the new millennium, John Woo's influence had saturated the interactive art forms. But the march of special effects and CGI opened the doors for a film with perhaps far greater...
I don't want to program a game. I don't want to be a game programmer. I want to be a game director. I wanted to direct a game where like it's open world, obviously small worlds, and it was kind of like Dungeon Crawler, where like you go into different areas and you fight monsters during that time. And I kind of want to base it like, I don't even know what I want to base it off of, because I'm a big fantasy nerd, so I like a lot of fantasy stuff. But I also like looter shooters and shit like that, so I like the idea of grinding certain things during that time. So like you get like all this shit, like guns and shit, but at the same time it's just like I also like the fantasy stuff. So I never really figured out what I wanted to do with that kind of thing. But I do want to direct a game one day. One day. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to, but I hold on hope. Dude, I heard Unity is fucking weird.
Greater impact. Enter the Matrix.
Yeah!
The reality-bending effect of bullet time opened up the potential to illuminate the otherwise imperceptible, rippling bullet trails amidst superhuman feat. In the wake of this, games employing similar time-bending mechanics were inevitable. And perhaps the most notable was Remedy's neo-noir Max Payne in 2001. The titular character is an undercover cop stricken by the death of his family and the prime suspect in a murder he didn't commit. A desperate man whose exoneration lies behind thousands of angry mobsters. Max faces insurmountable odds, surviving only on copious amounts of painkillers, while flinging himself into situations of reckless self-endangerment.
Working with people, I'm terrible at working.
Serious Sam, the first encounter, is altogether less serious in tone, despite what the title might indicate.
You already are an artist. You already
Your
have,
starting
like,
revolver
skills.
quickly
You just
finds a
need to
partner
translate
during the
those
first
skills
level,
into,
although
like,
these are quickly replaced as
type
the
of
level
art
of
that you
firepower
go for
required
those
ramps
kind
up
of games.
dramatically.
Like, what, like 16-bit, if I'm
The
correct?
stylish Devil May Cry features
It
demon
shouldn't be
hunter Dante
too
tackling
hard
the
of
supernatural
a-
with aplomb, with the help of his 2 contrasting
Let's go with
sidearms, ebony and ivory.
Yeah, we're doing our reaction.
In a similar vein, cinema saw a stylish action injection in 2002 with Equilibrium, where Christian Bale plays a dystopian cleric tasked with removing errant emotion through a perfectly choreographed gun kata. The similarly cinematic Max Payne returned in 2003, with the sequel adding some degrees of polish and documenting Max's ever-loosening grasp on reality. The fall of Max Payne was perhaps more than subtext. It would be almost another decade until the third game would emerge. Bungie's highly anticipated follow-up to Halo Combat Evolved came in 2004, and saw the introduction of both Xbox Live multiplayer and new maps and weapons, including the ability to dual wield. Given Master Chief's superhuman strength, it seems fitting that he has the potential to use 2 of the smaller weapons at once, although it does still carry an accuracy penalty and denies the use of your grenades. Bungie were amongst the first to introduce dual-wielded weapons to the world of FPS, and in the decade between Marathon and Halo 2, the convention had firmly established itself.
It was very interesting.
Once upon a time, the Call of Duty series took historical accuracy seriously, with the World War II setting providing enough intrinsic drama without the need to resort to theatrics. In 2005, Call of Duty 2 Big Red One was technically the first in the series to add dual-wielded weapons, although this was only within the multiplayer component. With the arrival of the current-gen consoles, dual-wielding had become commonplace, firmly cemented into culture after a decade of dual depiction.
I didn't know you knew how to animate.
Perhaps a sign that things had come full circle, 2007 saw the release of John Woo's Stranglehold,
It's like every fucking
directly
game
following the events of
with
Hard
fucking
Boiled
dual wielding.
and starring
It's
all of the
incredible.
acrobatic gunplay you would expect. Chow Yun-Fat reprises his role as Tequila,
Honestly,
and
I
the
would
game is an
believe it.
unabashed tribute to the choreographed shootouts that inspired so many imitations. Zombies are similarly
races are
cliche, and we saw a meeting of the undead with the
I knew they
impractical
were gonna bring in
in
Left 4
Valve's
Dead.
Left 4
I
Dead
fucking
in
knew it.
2008, where picking up a second pistol
guns on Left 4
effectively
Dead is
doubles your
great.
firepower against the oncoming horde. Inspired by Grindhouse-era cinema, 2009's Wet took a Tarantino-esque approach to gunplay,
Wet,
blending
dude,
dual pistols
I've
with a katana.
always wanted to play Wet. I've
The
always
same
wanted
year
to play
saw
wet.
dual
I
wielding
never
return
got
to the Call
chance
of
to play
Duty
wet.
series,
And then
with
I
Modern
heard that it
Warfare
got
2
bad reviews, and
abandoning
I'm
commitment to
mad.
realism and instead
So
adopting an
mad.
amped-up Hollywood tack. The power of the pre-patched dual Model 1887 shotguns is of legend, and you could equip 2 of every other pistol, machine pistol, or SMG. Nobody was left wanting for firepower in this installment.
So Call of Duty game time here. Well, I'm gonna fucking explain to you, dude. There was a fucking build that we ended up doing. It was scavenger, I think, because like we had to get ammo whenever you were running around. You'd get marathon, and I can't remember what third one you got. Marathon, scavenger, and there was like a third one. And then you got scorpions, and you dual wielded them. And the main thing about scorpions, I can't remember if it was scorpions or it was the Mac 10. It was one of the two. It was the one that had the fucking worst. It was like, it was a submachine gun, and it was like the worst thing that you can aim with. It was fucking garbage. But if you dual wielded them, the damage was fucking good. I can't remember the one. It was probably scorpions, but this was in what, fucking Call of Duty fucking Black Ops. It was Black Ops.
Not to be outdone, Bayonetta took dual wielding to an unprecedented level, with the titular character firing 4 custom-made pistols from each of her limbs.
Quad wielding. That doesn't
A
count.
superhuman feat beyond the ability of any mundane character.
Dude.
Since Modern Warfare 2, akimbo has been a recurring feature in the Call of Duty series.
Yeah!
Black Ops pistols were equipable in pairs, alongside the unusual HS-10 bullpup shotgun. Modern Warfare 3 had the infamous FMG-9s, with such tremendous lead output trumping any form of precision shooting.
That's fucking funny, dude.
More
Like,
recently,
fuck
Max
accuracy,
Payne
dude,
3
as long
took
as
the
I hit
series'
them.
signature gunplay to Sao Paulo. The Brazilian heat mirroring the intense firefights, only tempered by brief stints of bullet time. Gearbox's Borderlands 2 the same year introduced the Gunzerker class, able to wield any 2 of the quadrillions of weapons on offer simultaneously. Counter-Strike has long had a token set of dual pistols, and Global Offensive has the dual Berettas available as a secondary option.
Hold on, dude. I've played Counter-Strike. Aiming there is fucking hard, first of all. You have to fucking balance a lot of things here. Why would you put dual wielding in Counter-Strike? That seems a little weird. Cause I'm pretty fucking sure, like, there's a lot that goes into the aiming of like games like Counter-Strike, Valorant. That is crazy. OMG Black Ops, the game where I found out I love sniping people. Dude, hard scoping was always fun. I learned a quick scope.
Not a top-tier weapon, but handy enough in a close-range firefight.
I was a fucking monster in Call
From
of
its
Duty
origins in
1,
real
dude.
life, where pulling another pistol was far faster than a painfully slow...
Oh, hold on. I got a story here. So when I was younger, this was when I was in high school, I used to take a class where it was computer repair. It wasn't computers, it was repairing computers, right? So the teacher that was there, he had a couple computers that were still like working, and we'd use those to kind of like to do the software part of things, right? You know, installation and whatnot. And a group of us ended up going into it, and we were playing. They ended up downloading the first Call of Duty, not like the other one. I'm talking about like the one I think you can still get it on the PC. The first fucking Call of Duty to come out. And no joke, when we started playing that, I started like, because this was like the first time I used mouse and keyboard, but I got used to it pretty fucking quick, dude. I was a fucking monster. I was the best in that class, and the only person that could beat me were my own friends, which were like my two other friends that used to play these games a lot more than I did. So I was above average. I was way above average. But like my brother and my best friend, dude, no, those guys were fucking monsters. But I was good at the fucking game.
Reload, dual wielding made its way into cinema through the Western genre. From there, it inspired emerging action films tailored for a blockbuster audience. And directors like John Woo helped cement the use of guns akimbo into popular culture.
That's so cool.
With the emergence of the FPS genre at around the same time, it didn't take long for doubled-up gunplay to become commonplace, and it has been a familiar sight ever since. There's no doubting the fact that it looks cool, and when paired with slow motion a la bullet time, the bilateral badassery becomes quite palpable. While its effect might be muted through overuse, there's still a certain satisfaction to be had by recklessly blasting 2 barrels worth of lead towards an opponent.
Honestly, yeah.
A feat that's perhaps not
it's
superhuman,
great just to,
but certainly a spectacle.
You don't even have to be good at aiming, dude. That was the best part.
Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, farewell.
That was a good video. The amount of just like the way that it works is that because you didn't have aiming, you would just compensate by just making sure that you were able to look forward and shoot whatever the fuck was in front of you. And just make sure that the crosshairs was broadly in that area. And that was the best part of akimbo. That was the best part. But yeah, that ends the video. This is which video game introduced dual wielding. It turns out it was Triad and Marathon, which is actually kind of crazy because Marathon, isn't the game called Marathon that came out? Interestingly enough. All right, that was by Ahoy. If you guys want to take a look at that YouTube channel, I'm sure they do a lot of gaming histories type stuff. And interestingly enough, yeah, that was yeah, which video game introduced dual wielding. Love the video. But yeah, thank you very much for coming by. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, everybody.